It feels really nice to come and see you all. I think that I'll just start with a little bit of biographical facts, and being from the Valley, I think that's not going to sound surprising, that I did not have health insurance growing up. I actually did not have health insurance until I was 23, until I left the state of Texas. And so even though my background is in economics and math, I always had a very keen interest in why was it that healthcare services and healthcare access was not available to someone like me. So I do have a lot of degrees. I'm gonna go and recite them a little bit quickly. I am a doctor, but if you feel sick, you still need to call 911. So after I left the Valley, I went to Duke. I studied a master's in economics. I ended up working for a health economist there and began academic research, particularly in behavioral economics. Why were people doing what they were doing? Actually, diabetes was one of my first, or a topic in diabetes was one of my first peer-reviewed articles. While I was at Duke, I got a scholarship through the Rotary International Foundation to be an ambassadorial scholar in Spain. And I went to Barcelona and studied a master's in public health. And I became really, really convinced that there were a lot of things that were really wrong with the American health system. And I felt that I really, really wanted to have an impact, even though I get very scared with blood. So I knew that I was not going to be a doctor, but I wanted to have an impact in healthcare. Came back to the US and I went to Yale to study a PhD in economics, always with a focus in healthcare. My areas of expertise are actually in labor, economics, and public finance, and always my dissertation and my work focused on how to address disparities and increase access. In 2014, I moved to New York, where I was faculty at the medical school at Mount Sinai and teaching MD and PhD students and living in New York. It was a super interesting time. I had a very strong analytical background, but big data was actually becoming really big in 2014, and technology and things like hospital at home and remote patient monitoring, sensor devices were actually coming of age and becoming available. And that just sounded like a way more exciting part of the work that I wanted to do to accomplish improving access in healthcare. So I ended up working with a lot of very interdisciplinary teams that were doing things like pain monitoring, pain management for sickle cell patients, or remote patient monitoring for oncology patients, or postpartum care virtually. And so I became really convinced that these were the types of teams that I wanted to work on. And in 2016, I had the chance to move to Philadelphia as Associate Director of Population Health at Mainland Health System and Thomas Jefferson Health System, both of which are incredibly innovative in their virtual care and technology access. And I was leading a team that was doing data analytics. And again, I became just really convinced that this was the future of healthcare, and if we were to improve patient access and technology, these were the teams that were actually needed a lot of investment and the teams that I wanted to be part of. In 2018, I became Senior Director of Applied Research and Data Analytics at the American Hospital Association. I promise I'm about to be done. And I was leading a very large team and managing a very large budget on technology and innovation and data for hospital quality and performance improvement. My team and I were building data tools and data products on all of the data that is non-clinical data, all of the data that focuses on how teams in healthcare operate better. Falls reduction, hospital-acquired infection reduction, class VBT for any doctors in the room, like everything that makes the healthcare experience for the workforce better. I became a little bit frustrated because things were not moving as fast or as fast as I wanted, and so I decided to start working in venture and entrepreneurship and innovation. And I joined Anthem's Digital Incubator and Accelerator program, where I was leading the team on chronic disease and management. So I ended up working for the last 2 years with over 12 early stage companies, everything from musculoskeletal, IBD, some behavioral health, women's health, cardiovascular disease. And the role that my team and I had was, once these companies were admitted into our incubator and accelerator programs, thinking about how could we scale them. Anthem is the second largest insurance company, has a really strong presence, top presence in 14 states across the country. And so my team and I would literally have discussions with large employer groups, Kroger, Bank of America, et cetera, and trying to understand what were they interested, what types of technologies were they interested for their population, similarly for commercial lines of business or government lines of business. And what I became really, really convinced was sort of that I came full circle. Actually, the challenge hadn't been the teams on the ground, the quote-unquote incumbents at health systems, or the technology, because these technologies are ripe for scale, or the money, because these teams were actually trying to scale them. But it was actually the teams on the ground, the workforce, trying to understand how to leverage these new technologies. For everyone that's worked in enterprise and technology, data and technology teams tend to be shared services units. And so it's no different in a healthcare organization. This is the same team that is conducting data analytics for the oncology team, for the cardiology team, all of which are pulling them in all sorts of directions, trying to do a remote vision monitoring or a new model for delivery. And so these teams are stretched, they're generally understaffed, and when they're fully staffed, staff turnover is really high. So the goal of EmpiricaLab is to be the learning platform for these teams to operate and work better, and to basically speed the process of learning from each other to be much faster. We also believe that companies and organizations are more resilient when they manage their knowledge and training as knowledge capital, investing in it, taking care of it, and growing it. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. There is literally no universal platform for team training. If you go to Coursera or you go to Udemy, the quote-unquote content provider, or if you move into learning management systems such as Oracle Management System, the reality is that content is confusing to identify. If you've ever been in the position of purchasing content or management and training for your team, it's actually really hard to make that decision even when you have the budget. Questions that you'd be asking is, will the employees be engaged? Is the content relevant to achieve the goals? How will we measure the value of this content? Is this just sort of like a nice employee perk, or will it actually have returns? And will this effort truly help my team feel like they're gaining relevant skills? And so this actually is a huge problem, not only across industries, but in healthcare in particular, where like through COVID and even before COVID, we were seeing staffing shortages on the clinical side, but also on the non-clinical and administrative side. So 31% of hospitals have reported that they anticipate having staff shortages, or that they've had staff shortages. 79 of healthcare professionals say that they personally or their teams have been affected by the staffing shortages. And only 38% of organizations say that they're fully staffed within their health IT and their data teams. So this is a big, big problem. Effectively, organizations delivering healthcare are being asked to do way, way more with less, not only on the clinical side, but substantially important on the technical and data side. Teams really struggle with onboarding, and actually this has huge repercussions on revenue. And so it is estimated that between 1 and 2.5% of total revenue is lost because we just don't know how to onboard people really well. For an executive, it can take up to 26 weeks. From the market, from sort of potential customers, what I've heard is actually like closer to a year to fully extract the data scientists, the super senior data scientists that you're bringing on board, to truly extract all the value that this person could take. The average tenure of a data scientist in a healthcare organization is between 2 and 3 years. So EmpiricaLab is a multimedia platform of healthcare for healthcare teams to create and curate work-relevant training content. What this means is that basically very much like a learning management system, except that with authoring rights and with much more sort of like sophistication, we allow teams to aggregate and curate content that they may already have, or create new content like video, audio, or text that they want to share to train each other. We help teams manage this content and get data on it, collaborate, so we enable peer learning within teams, and effectively drive ROI. I've been working in healthcare long enough that I know that in order to have these conversations, we're going to have to really, really be sure that we're bringing value to the teams that we work with. So we're really more than a learning management system. We're team-centered learning. This is actually not so difficult or new to understand in other industries. And in fact, even in healthcare, these are the types of behaviors that teams already do, except that they often now don't have the type of technology. So if you think of some of the technologies that teams have, they'll have like quote-unquote work tools. This is your SharePoint folders, your Word documents, your MS Office, and they may have like communication tools like MS Teams or Slack. And so we're somewhere in between, where we allow you to do content management and content discovery, but also to keep data on that content. We're very into data. I think that you've gathered that I've been working in data and analytics for a while. So clearly we're very, very interested into this concept of data-driven curation. Now again, this is something like content curation that you do on your Twitter account or Medium. So we know that we're leveraging behaviors that users are already used to or at least familiar with, but we're bringing them into the enterprise. And of course, we want to drive ROI. With every team and organization that we work with, we ask them to put their goals and objectives and help us measure through their own sort of like analytics whether or not those goals are achieved faster. Things like onboarding your team faster, things like implementation that go well or goes better and faster. We are actually live, and one of our first clients ended up being the University of Texas Silicon Valley, and I'm really happy with that. I was talking to some of my professors and friends in the Department of Math and Mathematics and Statistics at RGV, and they told me about a National Science Foundation program that they have to train students. When I started telling them about the collaborative platform and about this aspect of peer learning, they really wanted to use it. So actually, I'm incredibly proud that my first client ended up being RGV. But we're live as well in a closed beta with the Yale Biotech Club. They are actually a very similar customer to the types of customer that we're interested. They organize boot camps and webinars every few months or every few weeks. They up to now did not have a place to put that content, and more importantly, get data on that content and allow people to collaborate and share, rate it, rank it. So they're in a closed beta. And in August of this year, we're launching with a health system in Philadelphia, a pilot on pathology and AI, where a team of clinical trainees in pathology are going to be collaborating with their data science team internally, and they're going to be doing cross collaboration. So this screen that you're seeing, and if I had time, which I thought I wouldn't have, we could kind of show you a little bit of a demo or a video, but I could send that to Lorraine. What do we mean by content? So when I think of content, and actually I'm very happy that we've had actually consultations in folks from clinical psychology. We're very concerned that there's a lot of cognitive overload in organizations. You just have a lot of content. Think of your SharePoint folders or your Google Drives. It's overwhelming. And inevitably, when someone new comes into the organization, you're kind of struggling around and browsing around to find the right files to share. Imagine this when you're running a very complex implementation of a new sensor device for patient monitoring at home. So this is exactly what teams are happening, and so we actually put a lot of thought and effort into what do we mean by content. So at the bottom, you're going to have core content. This is true to the team and doesn't need to be changed too often. This is the type of content that's like the type of tools that you use, who in the team is the person to go to if you have questions on population health. That core content is relatively static, although we help you keep it up to date and change it if it's like not relevant. The next layer is the layer where we play the most. It's the social layer, peer-to-peer learning. Norma is really good in population health, and Brian is really good in data science, or a specific quality check, or a HIDIS metrics, or a type of content that only that person can know. We make it super easy, literally with you can upload links, it automatically uploads the metadata, you could upload a video, audio, text. We really believe that the content should all be searchable, so we have a very powerful search. That is where the action happens. We structure this content in what we call collections and playlists. And so the playlists are multimedia and searchable. They fold into collections, and these collections, the team leader gets data on how these collections are performing and how these playlists are performing. The latest layer is content discovery. So what I've been telling you up to now is the chassis, is the infrastructure to bridge work tools with learning tools. Up to now, you might have an enterprise subscription to Coursera, which is very expensive, or Udemy, or you may have an Oracle LMS, $5 per seat per month, right? So you might have something very cheap on the chassis with very little analytics, or you might have something more sophisticated, completely not customized to your organization. We're somewhere in between. But we also know that one of our modes is having a lot of data and information on the actual problems that teams and organizations have. So we, of course, are thinking about building our own content library that is going to be customized to organizations in healthcare. This is a type of content that is not available yet, and nor will be, because it changes so quickly in new certificates or masters. I've had the good fortune of teaching at some of the best universities in healthcare. I've taught at the Medical School of Mount Sinai. I've taught online at USC in their Masters of Healthcare Administration. They're really, really great, except when it comes to data analytics and technology, because the content that organizations need is so customized, it's kind of like a market that is just not being served. It truly is a blank space, and we have a really, really great network of experts that can help us create this content. Part of our capital raise is to be testing this model where we will be building and creating our own content. The market is pretty big. In the US alone, learning and development expenditures were $92.3 billion just in the year of 2021. This could not be more urgent. Think of anyone that you know in any business. They probably need someone in data and analytics. In healthcare, the need could not be larger. Every CEO from every hospital has gotten on the stage and said they're going to move towards digital care. And the reason, one of the challenges for limiting barriers, and you can take it from me that I've worked on almost all parts of the industry, the limiting barriers continues to be talent and training and just having the right people. And so when we think of our market, we really think of the healthcare market in the US. Really every workforce, like I was describing to you, teams that were more data or more technology, some others are more AI and clinical. The workforce in healthcare is 22 million in the US. It represents 14% of the total workforce. And the quote unquote non-clinical workforce is 8.8 million. If we were to capture 2% of that 8.2 million, that makes us a 100 million company. There's obviously a huge global market, and so I got that question actually on our social right before about whether or not the platform is content agnostic, right? But we're building our data and algorithms recommending healthcare content. So I get that question a lot. Why are you not playing in other industries? I've been in healthcare long enough to tell you that it's really, really hard. And I believe that I really want to stay in healthcare. I told you my story. But I also think that other countries are struggling with exactly the same problems. And so actually staying in this vertical makes us that much stronger and that much powerful, but we believe that our scale is international. When we get this question about our customer segments, our initial partners are everywhere. I told you already academic partners, I told you already healthcare technology companies or healthcare systems. The ecosystem is actually really large. The powerful thing is that a lot of the workforce that we're after to train and scale and really work with, that's a workforce that works all over the ecosystem. So yeah, I actually have a little bit, okay, so I'll go faster. So in our business model, we're priced at $60 per month per seat. That comes to $720 a year. That's actually below our market research information of how much a person gets on their L&D budget per year in the organization, which in healthcare and for this type of FTEs ranges between $1,500 and $2,000. So we're actually coming really cheap in that sense. But of course, we also have the quote-unquote upsell, which is part of our expansion plan, to sell these personalized, customized modules for these teams and organizations. At $350 or $450 per collection of playlists, again, customized to that organization, we still come under your enterprise subscription for you to meet your concern. This is really the beauty of the B2B SaaS model. Okay, one faster. I'll tell you a little bit of our current status. I mean, I've been obviously working and thinking about healthcare and workforce for a very long time. We really just got started in February. In February, we launched our closed beta testing. In May, we got our first paying client. We have all these pilots that are being developed and launching. We were selected for the Texas Venture Labs Accelerator Program next summer. Quickly. We're generating some revenue. We have a partnership with Thomas Jefferson Health System in Philadelphia, which is a pilot that we're launching in August this year. This is the team. So we're a mostly Latino team, and we're mostly women. Our head of engineering is a woman. I'm the CEO. I told you a little bit about me. We have Cardi Mellon, graduate student for Masters in Data Science with 4 years of experience in Deloitte and enterprise software. So what we bring to the table is that actually we've been both in enterprise and direct-to-consumer products. We have an amazing set of investors and advisors that have come in. We started bootstrapping, so I put in $50K out of my own money into this, and Jerry Newman, who's an investor and friend from New York, specialist in software and technology, put in another $50K. So we're beginning our fundraise on this. I'm going to stop here. Sorry, Lori. That's right.
So what you can do is you can answer them.
I'll answer the
You know what
questions.
your slides are,
Yeah.
and maybe we can have some questions, and you will be able to answer those from
What are some peers that have exited, and what do you think your strategy is?
So is your question about like where do I think we could exit?
Yeah, exit strategy, and do you have peers who've done something?
Yeah. So you probably heard of consulting firms, advisory group, and other, there's huge consulting firms in the healthcare space. This is not surprising. There's a lot of like technical and staffing pressures in organizations, and so healthcare consulting organizations, and I'm not talking McKinsey, there are like specialized consulting firms, national, international level in healthcare. They've actually expressed a lot of interest in partnering with us. I initially thought that they will see us as a competitor in some way, but remember, for us, like we're in such a niche area and we're building the chassis, so they actually see us as something that can help us distribute their content. So one of the conversations that we're having right now is actually with a very large consulting firm in healthcare who is super interested in bringing us not the peer learning component. So our platform could be just the playlist and the data for these organizations. The organization, the host organization, would have to pay us to get the peer learning component and be able to upload their own content and keep track of that. But consulting firms have expressed a lot of interest. That would be it's a natural partner. So for a very large player, would be a very attractive acquisition. Because of the international reach, there may be other just sort of like technology companies, so a lot of project management. One of our potential partners in Florida, and I'll tell you just briefly, they want to use us. They went hybrid, and they're struggling with going with a hybrid workforce. And they have, it's a very large health system, $3.5 billion. And so they have a workforce of 400 just in their IT. So for them, they really see this as a way of keeping engagement and project management content. So that has helped us understand things like, Atlassian and Asana, and sort of like the suite of project management tools might be interested in us. Yep.
At the end of the day, is it ultimately a software business in many respects?
Yeah.
And how long have you been, when did you actually start developing the software product? How long has that been?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I have the good blessing and good fortune of knowing a lot of people in the space in healthcare technology. So I started building a prototype nights and weekends. I basically hired someone to build a prototype for me last year. With that prototype, I conducted a lot of customer discovery, and a lot of customer questions around whether or not there was a space for this. And so the product development didn't start until earlier this year, which is when we started launching almost immediately the closed beta. We do release every 2 weeks, so we move really, really fast. And so with that, it's sort of like get us in the hand of testers as quickly as possible, get that feedback, and release every 2 weeks. So we consider ourselves a software company, and our numbers really reflect being just sort of like the scale and marginal cost of a software company. The space continues to stay there, the need of my team calls it the need for a Norma as a service, where they still, organizations still ask us a lot, could you help us build what people should learn, even if they go and find it themselves, but for a specific type of role or role description or job goal or objective, could we help them design like what should they know? So one of the things that we're building this year, I didn't even have the time to mention, so I brought in 3 interns from Carnegie Mellon this summer from their data science program. And so of course, I have connections to Carnegie Mellon, and one of the things that we're building is just mapping out the jobs and titles and job descriptions. There's a type of analysis called KSAT, where you map out skills, capabilities, competencies, and tools. And so we're trying to map out for the quote-unquote technical staff, could we come up with sort of a universal set of skills, capabilities, competencies, and tools to start building recommendations and start also benchmarking, which a lot of healthcare organizations, that's all they want. It's sort of like, if my data scientist, I'm going to be paying this much, and this, could you help us benchmark what they should know? And for career development, if I have a junior data analyst, in order to get to a senior data analyst, could you help us map that out? For us, because we get to, when you enter into the platform, you pull sort of like your objectives, your strengths, like where do you think you want to learn, what is the content you can contribute, because if you can teach it, you know it. For us, that's a model that we're exploring as well.
If you've been coding hard for 6 months, what would prevent somebody from going, that's a really nice idea, and just copy what you're doing? Is there anything, any type of copyright or intellectual property that you have?
Right. So, yes, so we're building a proprietary algorithm on our recommendation. So a recommendation algorithm is something that we spent a little bit of time right now and will continue to spend time. The other part that is defensible is the way we've structured the content. Again, we've worked with clinical psychologists to really structure the content in a way that makes sense and services in a specific way. And yes, we're exploring pursuing patents on some of both on the design. So you can patent certain aspects, but you can patent the approach that you have to the course design. And so we're exploring that one, and definitely the recommendation algorithm for when we map the content.
Can you give me a real world example of a problem that somebody would come to you with, and then how you would solve that? What's the process? Who are you teaching, and how are they using the product?
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's one of the beauties of this, that once you tell us like that you want it, like we'll just give it to you. And first of all, you can start, so you, the organization, can start putting it into the hands. You designate who is a quote unquote learning leader. And so if you have a team of 10, you can say Samantha, Norma, and John are gonna be learning leaders, and they start uploading content. And it walks you through the experience. You don't have to be a teacher, it's not intimidating. To the extent that actually one of the things that we get the most is how easy it is, and that they can upload links. So one of the things that we know is that there is, I'll give you one very specific example, the digital medicine library of endpoints. These are the endpoints that can be tested against sort of sensors, what a standard is and things like that. That's on a library that is a link. And so an organization can say, I actually think my team should click on this link and know this library, so you don't have to have that content uploaded. What I meant that by this is that it's a non-intimidating tool that people can get started really quickly. Some of the things that get a little bit more complex on the bail side is when, in the pathology example, like they asked us, they want a lot of live webinars. So we can host live webinar within the platform, right? It's expensive for us to do that right now because we partner with Vimeo to sort of upload that. So that might be like a hardware customization, but other than that, once you tell us like I want to use it, if you're not asking us for any content, we'll just give it to you. You designate the learning leaders, and people start uploading content and deleting it, tagging it, indexing, getting the dashboard with data. Like it's pretty self-serve. Yeah, or I don't know who wants to go first.
Yeah, when you think about the capital you're seeking, when you think about the use in terms of percentages, is it X% for this function, X% for this? What are the kind of the top needs?
Yeah. Listen, I worked in enterprise and in huge organizations for a long time. I know what they expect, right? So you go to one of those meetings and one of the first questions is like, are you SSO? You know, do you have single sign-on? That's an expensive thing for us, you know, and so we know that on the engineering side, we still have costs to do. Some integrations. People really like to use, you know, MS Teams, and they're like, what if from MS Teams people upload a link and then it gets in a draft to the library of the playlist and like all of this kind of complex integrations? Will we totally want to do every single integration we get asked? Probably not. But we know that for that enterprise experience, you know, there are aspects on the engineering side. So a substantial part of it is engineering. The second part is, so engineering talent, basically also for us, like, you know, getting talent. The second part is that some of our sales cycle right now, and I was mentioning this like kind of at the beginning of this meeting, you know, right now I'm tapping into my network. I had the fortune of working with chief digital officers, chief innovation officers from almost all major health systems in the US, and so it's great, it's awesome. They'll take my call and they'll talk to us. But delivering to those type of customers and doing customer service and management and relationship building, it's expensive. We don't only want to partner with that type of large, 500 plus enterprise organization. We also want to go with the medium-sized organizations, which is a bigger market, probably, but they also might need a little bit more hand-holding. And so we know that sales and customer relationship is a second expense. And I think on the bottom part, the R&D. So that question about our patents, I'm coming from a world where, like, of course I want something to be really defensible. And so we'll definitely build that R&D a little bit further. So engineering, top one, sales and customer relationship second, and then R&D third.
So I'm trying to get a handle on this.
Yeah.
Who would be your ideal first best client, and what would they want you to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So listen, when we have these conversations, there's an initial cost because we can build an environment in a matter of like 3 days, and it's only because we want to test it. I mean, it could be even faster. They give us some information on how they want maybe the branding. Maybe they don't want to say EmpiricaLab, they want to say powered by EmpiricaLab, but they want the branding, so there's some customization. That really costs between $6,000 and $8,000. So for any enterprise, this is a rounding error. We like to put them into the hands of them really quickly. So it's sort of like sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, but is it like is it a medical practice? Is it a hospital? Is it who's the customer?
So there's been, I told you, I described to you 3 organizations, right? So healthcare teams and healthcare delivery organizations, these are health systems. And I'm using that word very cautiously. Not federally qualified health clinics, they don't generally have an internal quality and performance team, although some of them do. Large health system and organizations will have an IT team, which generally does IT implementations. They generally have a data team, or they call it quality and performance team, which are the folks that work with data. They might have other separate teams, billing and coding teams, and we might work with them in some things, but generally data and analytics teams are our target teams within these organizations.
Do you have a target company that you'd like to sign on with to be your first?
Yes, so we've signed already health systems, and we've signed already academic partners. With initial conversations, and we'd like to sign more of the technology companies. And I'll give you one example. There's a company in Austin that actually recently got funded. It's in digital health, and they're planning to hire 40 people in the next few months. And so for them, the problem of onboarding is substantial and imminent. So they're exploring using our platform to have that initial peer learning, to have upload some content, test how the content is doing. That's an ideal customer because for us, it's also an important thing right now that the customer is in the process or in the behavior of producing content. And so any organization, like I'm telling you, like the healthcare teams are doing data implementations, and so they're like constantly doing their lunch and learns, their webinars, they recently went remote, they're trying to engage. Healthcare technology companies and digital health in specific, they're doing a lot of hiring. So they're uploading a lot of content. That helps us drive engagement faster. Those are our ideal customers.
Is there any other company that competing with this technology, and also as an exit strategy, who would be buying you out? Is that the insurance company, pharmaceutical, or?
Sure. Yes, I hate the answer like there's no competitors, but I think of sort of the learning tools in a spectrum, right? On one end of the spectrum, less flexible tools, but more content. You'd have content providers, you'd have something like Udemy or Enterprise. You'd even have consultants come to the organization and do prepared kind of content for the team, solve a problem, leave some slide decks, and off they go. In the other spectrum, where the company gets a lot of flexibility but no content, you have proper quote-unquote learning management systems. So Oracle is actually pretty common, and for many things they're actually great. I mean, they're $5 per month on average per person, and people can upload content. They don't have any peer learning. They don't offer a lot of analytics, and the platform kind of looks a little bit, not very engaging for data and technology folks, but it's a solution. So we have a spectrum of offerings right now. We enter into this new sort of world of quote-unquote authoring tools. You have a whole culture of content creators. You have Medium, you have Twitter, you have Facebook, you have like all of these sort of platforms where people upload content. There are thought leaders on LinkedIn. That's sort of the type of authoring tools that we're trying to bring into the enterprise. Our look, for example, you can see it. We worked a lot with a designer on sort of like trying to incentivize people to share. We have a whole design paradigm around like taking off.
People-based curriculum that you're bringing in, and you're creating kind of like a virtual classroom, relevant to whatever organization you're dealing with.
I'm so sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of your question.
Sounds like you're just bringing in curriculum, right? Virtual curriculum from experts.
Yeah, for someone that has so many degrees, I've never got over school, right? I love school.
Right, you're creating a virtual university that you're gonna run with your software.
But it's also like empowering people, so it's very intimidating.
And accessing data at the same time.
Yeah, it's very intimidating to all of a sudden say like, hey Norma, teach this course. Like, well, I don't know. But what if we're just uploading links? You already do that. I'm sure you send a bunch of Slack links to your teams of cool and interesting articles, but what if we make you the person in charge to curate that content for your team? And so it's all about driving, I'm an economist at the end of the day, so it's all about driving incentives, build, more presence in your organization. And we also think this, again, makes
So
teams
why
more
is it
resilient.
EmpiricaLab? Why did you give it that name?
So in economics, you hear a lot of this like empirical testing. There's always like empirical something. It's an empirical problem, something that could be tested. So we believe that this is the type of work that teams and organizations should be doing, continuously be testing something. And the lab part was because we tested Empirica team and it was kind of cheesy, so EmpiricaLab is sort of a lab that, builds a team, is that idea. All right, I think Laura's gonna get mad at me.
One more question.
Okay.
1.7 million, what does it mean applied to?
Excuse me?
The 1.7 million, what does it mean applied
Yes.
to, and what does it cost you to make content?
Yeah, I mean, building and testing content is actually a little bit expensive from what we know. And it's mostly because we need to bring experts that are actually going to be top, frontier knowledge and experts in that part of it. It's going to be customized, right, in some way. Although we know it's scalable because similar problems are going to be faced in different organizations. We achieve scale that way. You still have to, pay that person in the license, identify the person with the license in the license. Back to the raise, top one, engineering costs. We still have some engineering costs to be built and we need to pay those salaries. And the second one, sales and customer relationship. And the third one, R&D. Right. So, thank you very much.